Hi everyone, I'm Celeste and welcome to my YouTube channel. Easter is right around the corner and today's tutorial is actually going to be something with rabbits. Specifically the white rabbit, like in Alice in Wonderland. Except we're not going to Wonderland, we're going to Alice Asylum, a project by American McGee to bring back another Alice game. Now the Alice games are really dark, gory, gothic, and beautiful in my opinion. I've played one of them, love it. Today's design comes from Omrikoreshart. They actually have this wonderful design right here, and I could not help but fall in love with it after my friend Stephanie, who runs NomTalkNetwork, showed it to me. If you guys haven't checked out, I've actually frequently been on their channel, which is pretty cool. But today's topic, we are going to be showing you how to create this lovely cosplay. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe for more future cosplay and sewing content on my channel. Yay! So let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial! Yay! For this project, I'm going to be using this really fun white faux sheep wool. And I mean, wow, how lucky am I to get this? I got this as a Christmas present from my mother-in-law. So thanks so much! Yay! To be honest, I didn't measure how much I got of this, so I'm sorry. For the top part of the dress, I decided to go with McCall's M416. This is a very old pattern. I don't know if it's still in stock, but you can use any type of bodice top that works for you. I'm going to be using this magenta satin that I got at Best Estafa, and you saw that in one of my previous videos. I got, I think, a yard, but it's either half a meter or a meter. One of the biggest things about this material is that I'm actually going to be using the reverse side so it's not so shiny. I'm actually going to be using this puffy headband that I got at Flying Tiger Copenhagen, and this was about $3. For any dress, you'll need a long zipper. I'm choosing red because this is all I have. So yeah, there's that. I also really want to challenge myself, so I'll be using some old shoes of mine. These were actually the first pairs of shoes that I ever got in Copenhagen from H&M. Just a little tidbit. For the shoes, I'm also going to be using the styrofoam here to help create the rabbit toes. Since I'm going to be using a pattern for the top, I just need the length of my skirt and how long my sleeves need to be. And then just worry about the leftovers for my shoes. Hopefully I have enough fabric. When making your skirt, make sure it is above your knees because it does not fall below her knees in the reference. I know that Alice's skirt shape is more A-line, but because of this fabric, I wanted it to be very full, so I decided to go for a box skirt. I wanted my skirt to be extremely full, so I cut my skirt piece twice instead of just having one rectangle skirt. I figured this would make it very full and very puffy. I pinned my dress pattern down onto the fabric, and you can notice that I didn't pin the entire thing. That's because I only want the top part, so I stopped where it said waistline, and that was where my waistline was going to be. I even give a little bit of edge, so I have some seam allowance here. And then all I did was cut it out. So I wanted to lay out my bodice pieces so I know which piece is which piece because the side middle and the side back are very similar. So it's kind of a good idea to unpin everything and just lay it out so you see where it's supposed to be. Now I just take all the bodice pieces and sew them together, and then I just sew my skirt pieces together as well. I'm not attaching it to the bodice just yet. Heed my warning because working with fur is really messy, so be ready for it. Now I'm going to take a needle and thread, and this is important because now I'm going to go ahead and gather the entire skirt base by hand. And this is a long, arduous process, but if you've seen some of my other gathered skirt tutorials, you'll see that all you do is put the needle in and out, and that's as much as you do. And then you just size it to your bodice top. My bodice top's hem was not even, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is take my rotary cutter and just cut the rest of it off. If you don't have one of these, that's okay. Go ahead and use scissors if you're following along with this tutorial. Honestly, I don't think a lot of you would follow along because this fabric is crazy and it sheds like everywhere. It's not fun, but it is fun. Now pin your skirt to your bodice and take it to the sewing machine and sew it all together. Make sure to even out your gathers so that the middle and the front and the sides are all even with how many gathers are in one spot so it's not uneven. I don't think you should have this problem, but if you do, go ahead and watch one of my other videos where I talk about having a gathered skirt nice and... The link will be in the description box down below. I had tried on my Alice dress and the back was far too loose. I started to cut off some of the back part with the rotary cutter, but unfortunately it wasn't really cutting through the layers of fur and the fabric, so I just opted to use my scissors instead. It's okay to go ahead and go back and modify things if it doesn't fit you. It's okay, it's just a sewing project. Nothing bad here. With my back cut out, I'm going to go ahead and add my zipper in. This is going to be a little bit tedious, so I hope you're paying attention. Before adding your zipper in, like any good person, you want to go ahead and trim off all the fur from 2 inches from your edge. This is because your teeth will get snagged with the fur, so go ahead and cut off at least 2 inches worth and then sew your zipper in. By now, you guys should know how to sew a zipper, and if you have any problems with that, leave it in a comment down below and I can tell you how to do it. Finally, the crazy part of adding the sleeves. I had no idea how I wanted to do this until I remembered how I did my Morticia costume. So I'm going to line up the entire sleeve hole, I don't know what else to call it, the sleeve hole, and now I'm going to lay it on some newspaper that I taped together so it's long enough. And then I'm just going to trace the outline of that and then lengthen out how wide I want my sleeve to be. When I was happy with the size and pattern, I went ahead and cut it out. I made sure to have the bottom of the sleeve have this curve just so it looks like I'm in a stuffed animal. So I made sure I had that there. Think of having mittens, but just an entire sleeve of mittens in a dress. Okay, just like before, we're going to pin down our pattern and cut it out. Make sure you're cutting out 4 pieces of this because you have 2 arms, so you need 2 pieces for each arm. So 4. This took up so much of my fabric, but at the same time, I'm really happy to be using such a funny, fuzzy fabric. Oh my god, there's so much fur everywhere in the house. It's okay though. It's okay. Once they got cut out, I'm going to sew them all together. Not all 4 pieces together, just 2 pieces sewn together to make one giant sleeve sock. A sleeve sock arm, yes. Once your sleeve socks are done, go ahead and attach them to your armholes. You want to make sure that the entire armhole is going to be closed with the entirety of your sleeve sock. This might be a little bit hard, but try to sew to your best your sleeves closed. If you want, you can start by basting stitching it by hand and then sewing it by machine. Whichever way works for you, just take your time. This gets really, really messy. There are these awesome stitches on the arms. I'm going to be using this leftover yarn from my Asuka kimono cosplay. In order for me to attach it, I'm going to be using thread and a needle to hand sew it all the way around the arm to make sure it stays in place. I want to make sure that it stays in place by anchoring it first with a knot and then sewing around it repeatedly a few times and then go all the way around the perimeter of the sleeve. Make sure that you whip stitch this. You're not going to be sewing it like a normal stitch going in and out, but around it, securing it in place. Don't worry too much about this being perfect. The messier, the better, in fact. Also, a lot of it's actually going to be covered by the fur, so don't be too stressed out by it. Just make sure that you are still using black thread for this, not red like I had in the previous shot. Now, the paw part of the sleeve actually has these cute little toe beanies. So I'm going to take the pattern that I created earlier and start drafting out some little circles to put on the paw pad. Once I was happy with the paw pattern shape, I made sure to cut it out on the fabric, sew 2 of each, one for both hands of course, flip it inside out, fill it with stuffing so it has a little bit of paw paddingness, and then glue it to the actual mitten. I know I didn't film this part, but it's basically making tiny pillows for your mittens and gluing them down. The last thing I did for my sleeves was have help so someone could cut a hole in the wrist area so I can actually have my hands come out and I can actually use my phone or touch things or eat something, just have my hands free. Alice has this big bow at the back. Since the fabric is really big and makes me look a bit fluffy in so many words, I'm going to create something called a waist tie. This is really common in Lolita dresses where there is a tie at the waist and you pull it to the back to create a butt bow. This helps make the waist look snatched and nice and tight. I'll be doing the same by cutting out thick strips of the maroon fabric and some interfacing. If I don't add interfacing, my bow would flop and be dead, and I don't want that. So I decided to glue the edges down on top of the interfacing so I wouldn't have a seam on my bow. Afterwards, I just hand sewed the ties to the side of the dress, and now I can tie a big butt bow on my Alice dress. There are these really cool pockets on the front of the dress. I repeated the process of making a pattern from paper, pinned and cut it out on the fabric, sewed it together, flipped it inside out, and this time added interfacing so it holds its shape. To create the designs on the front, I used some fabric glue and black yarn to create the shapes. One side's a triangle, the other side is a triangle with a plus. I cut small pieces of yarn and glued them down to create the stitches all around the pocket. Once the glue was dry, I glued it to the front of the dress. The reason why I glued it was because it just made sense. I didn't need to sew it down, so it was just easier for me to glue it. Pick your battles. This one I decided to glue. And finally, I decided to add tulle to the inside of my dress. My dress is really heavy and I really wanted to add a petticoat, but I couldn't do that with just another petticoat being added. So I'm going to use up all the tulle that I have here and create an inside petticoat. All I'm going to do is fold over this tulle, sew it together, and then hand sew it to the waistband inside the dress. I have to interject and stop myself from continuing the tutorial to tell you that I will not be featuring how I made these ears on this video. Reason being is because I did this also on my Eevee tutorial. Go ahead and check that out. If you have any questions on how I did that, you can hit me up on my social media channels, or you can actually leave a comment down below. The biggest difference about this is they're not like Eevee, but they're just bunny ears, and they're really flexible and foldable. Just make sure to add an elastic at the bottom so it doesn't come undone, even if you wear a wig. It's really tight. It's nice. Back to the tutorial. Because of the field that I'm learning in school, I was able to 3D model this necklace pendant off of her actual design. This was 3D printed in my house, and I'm super excited to be able to create this into the necklace. So what I'm going to be doing is just painting it black. Nothing special. Once both the back and the front were painted black, I added some string and created it into a necklace. One of the biggest things that I did change before filming this was that this was just black string. I didn't think it was striking enough against the actual outfit, so I changed it to the same black yarn that I've been using throughout the entire costume. Next, and certainly the final part, are the shoes. I undid some of the laces of the shoes and tied them in a knot. I plan on sewing the shoe tongue to the shoe itself so it does not scrunch when I try to put my foot in. I cut the rest of the shoelaces off of the shoe. Using a needle and thread, I'm just going to work my way all around the shoe tongue, making sure it's stable and inside the shoe so it doesn't come off. Basically, just turning these lace-up shoes into loafers. You can see all of this needlework that I've done here and made sure that they're not going to come undone. Now I'm going to be taking out this star foam and I'm going to be using this to create the base for the toesies. This part was really challenging, but I decided to keep it as much of a lip on the styrofoam for the shoe to grab hold of, and so then I cut off the excess. I cut 3 pieces for each individual toe. I utilized both big corners as my big toes for each shoe, and then I cut 2 smaller pieces for the smaller outside of the toes. So now that I have the toes where I want it to be, I know that they need to be shaped, but I still need something to create the base of the boot. Hey, look at this lamp! So I think this lamp is a great idea that I can add to my shoes. So I'm just going to harvest this little white piece here and take it for myself. So this is going to be my shoe boot base. I cut the lampshade off camera, but basically just make sure I can wrap around the shoe. My husband is helping me create the correct dimensions while I glue the styrofoam to the tippy toes of my shoes. I made sure to add plenty of hot glue and put my hand inside the shoe to make sure it holds it in place and gets adhered properly. Next up, we had to create the toes to be nice and circular. You know, toes aren't really polydimensional, kind of like Minecraft, so we're just going to cut them up and make them really nice and curved. These aren't my hands, these are my husband's, just forewarning. Hooray, I have my husband helping me with cosplay, so it's actually really exciting for me, so hooray! Everyone who's watching this far, go ahead and leave a comment saying, well, amazing, my husband is in the comments down below for him helping me out. Because I had cut up the lampshade, I needed to add the Velcro back to it, so I'm using the sewing machine to slowly sew it back together. Bread knife versus styrofoam, who will win? Now came the task of actually adding the boot part to the shoe. Because I knew that there was going to be a problem with me putting the shoe on, I made sure to have it openable so I can put my foot through it. So I'm only gluing down part of the lampshade to the shoe. The other part is going to be open and lets me get into the shoe, seeing if it fits properly or if there's any snags, and then I can close it just like a regular boot, except with Velcro. Most boots don't use Velcro to close. So we cut off some of the bottom so that way it can close and open easy. Now is the perfect time to grab all of those leftover scrap pieces and just start hot gluing them all over to the shoe. Luckily, I had so many pieces that it was easy to cover the toes with, and I didn't have to cut too much from the main fabric. My husband had started cutting up the fabric so I can wrap around the boot. So we just kept adding tons and tons of hot glue and then adhering the fabric to the boot. The fabric itself wasn't a problem. It was just making sure that we didn't get burned by the hot glue or push in so much of the fur that you can't see where we're going, especially with the Velcro areas. Now that the boots are basically covered in nothing but fur, the last thing to do was add these cute bows. The first bow I made was actually too big and then we had to resize them. So what I'm going to do is close my boot and then add the bow with some hot glue and call it done. The main reason why I didn't want to sew this on is because there's so much glue there already. I didn't want to go ahead and break a needle, so I'm just going to add glue, place it onto the top, not like the tippy top, and then I'm done. So I know a lot of people might think, oh yeah, another sexy bunny cosplay. That's what she's going to be doing for Easter time. Yeah! I actually really wanted to push and get this costume done because it's been on my mind for a long time. My friend showed it to me and my mother-in-law bought me the perfect fabric. So this was a godsend. It told me that I needed to have this. I wanted to have this. Even my husband helped me. So that is so amazing. I'm super happy to have this costume completely done. I do hope that our house is going to recover from having so much fuzz and fur everywhere. It's never going to end, you know. Another cosplay is going to have fur, and then we're going to have fibers floating around everywhere. But that's another story for another day. If you like this video, maybe you can check out some of the ones floating around my head. Make sure to leave a comment if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe. You know, it never hurts to click that red button down below, or red letters down below, so you can become a member of my sewing pincushion called YouTube. And remember to stay inspired, be creative, and I will see you in a future video. Bye!